So the annual podcast awards went down a few days ago, and completely unsurprisingly, a few content providers swept the whole deal. Best Gaming Show went to The Instance by Frog Pants, Comedy went to The Morning Stream by Frog Pants, you get the idea. Anyway, while the sweep was not completely surprising, what did really shock me is that a very special MMO Play podcast that really tried to help some people out came out this past year and wasn't even nominated. I personally think we got absolutely shafted. What do you think? Have a listen, let me know.
On a sunny day in 2005, a young Eastern European student was heading from school to his family's castle. That man's name is Count Volronik von Chokulatismov, but all his friends simply call him the Count. Here he is telling us about that day.
It was just a normal day. The sun was hidden behind the veil of eternally saddened gray clouds that live over my homeland. You could smell bones on the wind. Nothing special, yet.
What the Count didn't know was that his on-again, off-again love interest was about to go missing, and his entire life was about to get a whole lot crunchier. Or maybe he did know it. Here's some music so that you can begin constructing the narrative in your mind based off of its tonal and emotional characteristics, with minimal factual realities to support the conclusions that you'll inevitably draw. This is Serial.
The Count said it was a normal day. What a load of shit. That day was anything but normal.
This is the other big player in this story. For legal reasons, we can't disclose his name, but I can tell you that he's not from the same region as the Count, that he's a part of the American military, and that he's much older than the other players in this story. We'll refer to him as Captain. Here's a random interview to lead us to our next major point because I can't think of another way to do it.
He was just there, and then snap, crackle, and pop, he was gone.
The he, that random voice that I totally didn't do myself, is referring to is local miscreant and resident floozy, Tony. Tony was a rare breed. A genetic deformity granted him a permanent alteration that was striking to everyone who saw it.
He was striped, the most beautiful stripes.
The Count and Tony were lovers and had been for some time. Obviously, the difference in their backgrounds was the subject of much contention between their families. Nobody liked them as a couple, yada yada yada, backstory, introduction of stereotypes long adopted by Western minds, most notably penned by Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet, which everybody knows, so here's a lot of tropes from that to subtly persuade you even more without, of course, ever actually persuading you. Fast forward a bit. Tony won a basketball game and did an interview with the local news anchor just before he disappeared. About the game, he said it was
great.
No one ever saw Tony again. Or maybe they did. More music.
I didn't kill Tony. I know the only other possible reasonable explanation is that it was a lone, crazed psychopath, and the odds of that happening are astronomical, but still, I didn't kill him. The Count totally killed Tony. He grabbed him by the tail, whirled him around his head, then bit him on the neck and drained the life out of him.
I should mention here, Tony has a tail. I should also mention that the Count has fangs, and that Tony's body was found with fang marks on his furry neck, and all the blood was drained out of him. When I asked the Count about that, he had this to say.
Oh, anybody could have done that. Do you know how many people in the world have fangs? Like 12 at least.
The Count was in prison shortly after Tony's body was discovered. He was quickly convicted and sentenced to life. 10 years later, I discovered this case and decided to make subtle suggestions about the Count's innocence on this podcast, mostly because I was seduced by his dark, murderous charm. When I told the Count about this, he said,
Tony told me I was murderous right before I murdocked him. Right before I murdocked him. It's a term we use in Europe. It means to kill someone. Figuratively, of course. Take their life emotionally. Watch them stop breathing with their heart. Like stop feeling, you know? I freely admit to murdocking Tony, but I never murdered him.
And there you have it. My totally impartial reporting on these events and profile of the handsome, mysterious, dark, totally trustworthy, and probably innocent Count Valronic von Chokulatismov. This has been Serial, and I'm totally not taking any sides here. On the next episode of Serial, an eyewitness makes a confession.
Okay, I'll level with you here. I killed Tony. I whirled him around my head by the tail, then drained the blood out of him. It was all me.
But can we really trust a man who's been in prison for a decade? And how do you protect a sexy-ass vampire from himself? Next time on Serial.